Welcome to Expert Profiles Atlanta, where Atlanta's influencers and innovators share strategies for overcoming obstacles and achieving success in business and life. Here's your host, best-selling author and Atlanta influencer, Neil Howe.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is your host, Neil Howe, and today my special guest is Ali Mirza. He is the president of Rose Garden Consulting, and he helps founders and business owners systematically grow their revenue and see predictable growth so that they can scale their companies. Welcome to the show, Ali.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your company, Rose Garden Consulting, but ultimately who it is that you help.
Sure. Yeah. I've been selling for most of my life since I was 19 years old. I was the guy that I used to sell life insurance. So I was the guy that would go door to door selling life insurance. Did that for a number of years and eventually needed a little bit of a change. So that's kind of when I started up Rose Garden Consulting. Originally, we started off as outsourced sales consultants, and we were just kind of like a hired gun. And eventually, things were going great with one of my clients, and he eventually asked me, things are going great, but if you get hit by a bus tomorrow, we're back to square one. And I said, well, yeah, you're right about that. And he said, well, why don't you write down everything you do for us? And I said, well, that's not a part of our original agreement, so why don't you pay me for it? And surprisingly, he did. So, and that's kind of when, at that point, that's when the light bulb in my head went off, and I realized that avenue was infinitely more scalable. So that was about 4 or 5 years ago, and now what we do, and we exclusively focus on, is working with founders and business owners and helping them build out their sales processes and systematize it, document it, so that we can hire, recruit, train, onboard, and scale their sales teams. So that's in a nutshell what we do.
Well, great. Well, selling life insurance is definitely a great way to get started. It's something that people always need, and definitely gets you in the habit of sales, which is excellent. And congratulations on getting the consulting business started, which is awesome as well. But tell me, what do you think are the real problems that these business owners have? What are the main problems? Ultimately, I guess it's sales. Without sales, you don't really have a business. But what do they struggle with?
Well, what I always tell everyone, kind of piggybacking off of your sentiment there, is, we're all in the same business, and that business is the money business. So as long as you're in the money business, you're making money, you're doing well. And we just ultimately have different things that we sell, and so we have a different vehicle to which we make money. And there are two main problems to the money business. The first main problem is generating opportunities, generating qualified leads and people that raise their hand and said, yes, I'm interested in your solution. And then the second problem is then taking those interested opportunities and closing them and converting them into cash in your bank account. Those are the main actual problems, but people typically have symptoms and subsets of those problems. And I don't want to paint everyone with the same brush. Everyone's got, something else different that's going on. But typically it's what I look at as either unconscious competence. So they know what they're doing. They know how they can execute it themselves, but they don't really know how to multiply their efforts or what to tell their salespeople, their first sales hire, how to go about doing exactly what they do. So they have a little bit of that unconscious competence, and so typically that's the main challenge that we focus on. And then ultimately, I would say the other typical challenge that most people are seeing is usually they don't even know what they're doing, and whatever it is that they're doing is not actually even working. So we have to go in there and really fine-tune their process and find out where the gaps are and where their pitfalls are and shore up those.
Yeah, I see that a lot of times. There's a lot of really hardworking, honest businessmen out there that are just, doing what they know and working really hard, but still not getting anywhere. It's like they're treading water and they're not really progressing at all. Is that a case of just doing the wrong things?
Oh, for sure. I mean, my apparently my grandpa used to say this all the time. I never heard him say it, but my dad tells me that my grandpa said it all the time, which was, "Who cares about hard work?" Right? You look
Mm.
at you look at some of the hardest working people on the planet, and they may or may not be successful. Right? Let's call it let's call it the server that's pulling the midnight shift. Right? You think that person's not working hard? Of course, that person's working hard, but maybe they're barely making ends meet. So while hard work has its time and place, that's not the be all end all. So, I mean, you really do need to work smarter. You need to work hard and you need to work smart. So just because you're killing yourself doesn't mean you're going to be successful. So you really, so what I always say is engage in the right activities and the results will follow. So do the right things. And that encompasses both working hard, but then also having a proper system that you follow and you're engaging in the right activities. You're doing the right things. And then at that point, the results will follow. So that's my thoughts on that.
Right. So it is about having the right system in place. So what do you do, Ali, when you go in and you're having your first meeting or consultation with a business owner? What's the first thing that you look for?
Well, I mean, so it it depends. I mean, we'll typically be working together and working through their process before we'll actually engage with them, because ultimately, I like to only work. This might sound a little weird, but I only like to work deals where I know I'm going to see success and results. So I'll work with a client for a little while, just on an informal basis, and really understand what they've got going on, what their process is, who they serve, and that really is a little bit of a vetting out period, because ultimately, it doesn't matter if I give you solid gold, but if you don't follow it and you don't do anything with it, there's no magic bullet, right? So you do still have to work it. So that's kind of what we're typically working together with. But once we're actually engaged, we'll actually go through an assessment. And one of the first things that I always look at is who are the people that you serve? What is your target market? Because ultimately, nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about your product. Nobody cares about your solution. None of that stuff matters. What matters is people care about themselves. And if we can get into their head and their brain, only then can we find out what motivates them. And then only then can we craft our messaging. Only then can we really tailor our solution to what it is that they need. So it really depends, not necessarily on my client as much as it depends on their client. So that's really the first thing that we look at, is trying to figure out who they serve and what that market looks like.
You definitely got to know your target market so that you can speak to them. Speak to them properly. Talk to me about the difference between marketing in your business and actually closing the business.
Well, I mean, so the first thing that I always, the way that I look at it is, if someone tells me that they're in sales and marketing, I mean, that I look at that like someone telling you they're a doctor and a lawyer. I mean, you could be both, but you're probably not, right? I mean, those are definitely distinct functionalities. Now, that being said, marketing and sales do need to work symbiotically together. If you compartmentalize them and silo them off and section them off separately, that won't work out. But marketing really is about generating that opportunity, and I mean, marketing is such a vast channel in itself. I mean, you can have branding, you can have messaging, you can have copywriting, you can have paid ads, you can have organic content. I mean, there's a million different things within the world of marketing. But so I definitely would be doing it a disservice if I just summed it all up. But that really is about creating that awareness, creating the need, and creating and getting people to, whether it be go from pain unaware to pain aware, or just letting them know about who you are. But it really is about trying to bring them to the table, or when you go and approach them via your sales channels, them having already some semblance of who you are and what you do. I would say that's marketing. then sales really does come down to closing business. And this new philosophy of, finding the right fit. While of course, yes, the person, you can definitely squeeze, put someone in a headlock and squeeze until they say yes, but that's not the right way to run a long-term sustainable business. But I feel like people have overcorrected that, and people are so afraid of being, the Glengarry Glen Ross of the always be closing, which I definitely disagree with. But the other side of that being, we're just looking for a fit. The old salesman saying, right, is like, when does the salesman's job start? Right, it starts when the client says no. Right, I mean, anyone can sell to somebody that says, "Hey, I want that one." Right, I pay my salespeople, I pay them a commission and a hefty commission because I want them to turn that no into a yes. So it really is about communication and messaging, and ultimately closing that business, building that trust, building that comfortability for that person to say, and motivating them to turn on and say, "Yes, you know what? Here's some money. Give me what you got." So sales really is about cashing checks and picking up money, and anyone who says otherwise is just confused, in my opinion.
Okay, so do you have a specific way to do that, and do you have to be a born salesman in order to make money?
So two parts to that question. The first part, the specific way, I guess. It really depends on what it is you're selling and who it is that you're selling it to, but ultimately you have to motivate the person to want to take the next steps. And that's your job as a salesperson, is to have that conversation, properly communicate the messaging, and motivate them to want to move forward with you. Ultimately, the question about, do you have to be a born salesperson? There's no such thing as a born salesperson. The only thing that are born are baby boys and baby girls. Salespeople are trained, and no different than someone is born with a surgeon gene or a lawyer gene or a rocket scientist gene. There are no genes for that, so there's no gene for salespeople. Of course, yes, there are some people that are naturally more charismatic, or their nurturing has made them more outgoing or a little bit more personable. And of course, that definitely helps you with your sales abilities. But that's not the be-all, end-all. And ultimately, sales is a skill that can be learned and that needs to be learned. And there are specific things that you can do to sharpen those skills. And those skills are what you bring into a conversation to be able to really finesse the conversation. And some people mistake that for manipulation. It's not manipulation, but call it whatever you want to call it. It really is about ensuring that you have the right conversation, because people come in with their own prejudices. No one comes in with a clean slate saying, "Hey, let me listen to this person and see if I actually need what they're pitching." They're coming in thinking, "This guy's trying to sell me. I need this. I want this. I want to pay this." So as soon as someone comes in with those, preconceived notions, the chips are stacked against you. So you need to be able to have the appropriate conversations to basically disarm them and then try to clean the slate as best as possible. Once you do that, then you can actually have an appropriate conversation. And those are all skills that you need to learn.
Now, there's the trending word, I guess, for the last few years has been the funnel. Talk to me about a funnel, what that means and for marketing, and how it gets you down to actually having that sales conversation.
Well, I actually really, there's a lot that I disagree with, and I'm a little bit of a contrarian when it comes to things, but I actually do like the concept of the funnel. I think that's actually, a really good, descriptive way of kind of looking at things. Because ultimately, a funnel is wide at the top and smaller at the bottom. And really that kind of speaks to, sales is not just a numbers game, but ultimately you do need to have enough at-bats in order to be able to appropriately vet your process. So the concept of the funnel is, you're starting with a larger sample set of people that you're speaking to. And as you speak to them, there are going to be people that are going to, whether they be disqualifying themselves or you disqualifying them, because I'm a firm believer in don't try and sell the unsellable. There's more than enough people out there that are willing to pay you for your services. Go find them. Don't get hung up on somebody. So the concept of the funnel is, as you work your way through the funnel and work down, You're limiting your pool of people that you're speaking to until you get to a point where you've got your qualified individuals that are interested that you're now actually going to spend majority of your time with. And there are milestones within that funnel. So, the funnel starts at the, probably a crude way of putting it, but basically starts at the marketing end, where, you identify your people who, your target market. And then as you move through the funnel, your next milestone would be, reaching out to them, creating that awareness. And you progress down all the way from, a marketing qualified lead. And then there's this threshold where they switch over into a sales qualified lead. Now that's where the marketing people hand that prospect off to the salesperson. Salespeople now take it, and now they're engaged in whether it be a one-on-one conversation or a person-to-person conversation, and really digging to understand and identify their needs and their pain points, and then really, matching them up with the appropriate solution. And so that would be probably a long-winded, very rough way of kind of explaining the funnel.
And where do you see the biggest breakdown kind of in that funnel system that people have the most problems with?
I'd say twofold. I mean, again, every company is different, right? But what I'm used to typically seeing is the first break is usually between MQL to SQL. So when someone becomes a marketing qualified lead and marketing has identified that, hey, this person might be a good person for us to go after, they're exhibiting all the signs of what we would determine as a good quality lead. And when marketing has done their job, now they're trying to pass them off in the sales. There's usually some level of a disconnect there. What it is, I mean, that's unique to each company, whether it be personalities, whether it be messaging. You never know what it is, but there's typically some level of a disconnect from going from a marketing qualified lead to a sales qualified lead. From there, I think secondary, what we also see is when someone goes from a sales qualified lead into the sales pipeline, into the sales funnel, starts working their way through, the second biggest disconnect I usually see is now salespeople, they themselves have to qualify this lead. Maybe they've exhibited some signs of needing our services or our solution, but do they actually, and do we actually solve their exact pain point? And what I typically see out of, quote unquote, we'll call them bad salespeople, but really it's just maybe they're not properly trained, or maybe they just don't have the right conversation, whatever the case may be, is a mismanagement of the qualification. They disqualify people that they had a bad conversation with and say, oh, that person's not a good fit, or that person doesn't actually need our service, or that person's unqualified. But that's a nice, easy way of taking the blame off of yourself for having a shitty conversation, for not having the right conversation with them, and getting them to a point, or getting the conversation to a point where you can actually continue with them and you can see success in the future. So those are typically the two typical areas where I see a breakdown.
And what is the one thing that you see most often that you can step in right away and do for a company that's immediately going to impact the bottom line?
Oh, the qualification. I think that's so here's the problem with the qualification. So typically people, they'll spend the first 5 minutes of their call building the rapport, asking, ridiculous questions. How's the weather? How's your dog? Oh, I saw you like baseball, trying to build up that friendliness, and that prospect's not buying any of it because they know that you're, being a typical salesperson trying to build that rapport. And then you ask them some garbage high level questions to, quote unquote, see if they're a fit and qualify them. Again, your prospect can see it coming a mile away. And then you settle with, what, based on everything you're telling me, it really sounds like I can actually help. And then bang, you go right into your pitch, and bang, 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 bang. You start feature pitch and this and this and this and this. And you've never built any sort of connection with your prospect. You've never, you sound no different than the, 5, 10, 100 other people that they've spoken to. And ultimately you haven't moved them enough to want to really want to work with you. So what we always do is we come in there, I don't want to say we flip the script, but what we look to build rapport in a different way. The number one thing that people love talking about them is themselves. So what we do is, as salespeople, we like to I like to train people to say that, hey, offer up a little bit of information about yourself, make that person know you a little bit better so they feel comfortable in offering up a little bit of information about yourself. Now, don't go off on a 20-minute tangent bragging about how amazing your life is. Nobody wants to hear that. But tell them a little bit something about yourself, who you are, build up that familiarity, a little bit of comfortability, and then ask them questions about themselves. And I'm a big fan of asking personal questions. Get, the old saying goes, people buy off people that they like. So, once they start telling you stuff about themselves, their guard goes down a little bit. They start sharing some proper information with you and slowly ease into their business, slowly ease into their pain points, but have very, very pointed and specific questions. I'm not a fan of selling by way of pitch. I'm a fan of selling by way of questions. If I tell you something and I tell you my product can do this and I can solve this problem for you, you may or may not believe me because I'm a dirtbag salesman. But if I ask you a whole host of questions, I'm going to build a lot of faith and trust with you because of two reasons. Number one, if I'm asking all the right questions, that means I know something, right? You need to know a certain amount about something in order to be able to ask the right questions. But number two, as I ask all these questions and everything that this person tells me, well, they believe every word that comes out of their mouth. So all I have to do is ask the right questions to A, showcase that I understand their situation, but B, if I'm asking the right questions, I'm in essence affecting their answers. And as long as I ask the right questions that are going to give me the appropriate responses, they're going to sell themselves. And that's the way that we see a monumental shift. That's how we move the needle forward. So the big key and the big trick is, what are those questions? So that's what we spend the assessment, and that's what we spend our time doing, is making sure that we can figure out what those questions are and building out that.
Great. And to see if we can give our listeners some real value here, what kind of questions are they? I know there might be different for different companies, but are there a set of questions you really try to get an answer to?
So, I mean, yes, it is fairly unique and specific to each company because number one, it depends on the pain points that you're solving, and then it depends on what it is the solution that ultimately delivers. But I mean, in kind of a very, very broad brushstrokes, I mean, you if I ask you certain pointed questions about you, right? So if I say, hey, did you your social security number, it ends with 6. Did you know why is that? Well, all of a sudden you're like, shit, how the hell does he know my social security number, right? But now let's just say that that's something that I could or should know, right? Without stealing all your information, that might impress you, right? Or if I ask you very specific questions. So what I always say is ask them specific questions about their business that aren't necessarily related to high level standard questions. So don't say, what are some of your goals? Because you can ask anybody that. But if I was to say, hey, I noticed that you are focusing in the enterprise market for, SaaS businesses or this type, or, very pointed question. Can you help me understand how you closed Chase Bank or Fidelity or this, right? All of a sudden that builds up a lot of familiarity and a lot of confidence in you that, hey, this guy knows that I closed Fidelity. This guy knows that I'm focused on these industries. So it really depends on, so one of the things that's very important is doing your homework before the call and before hopping on that, and then customizing those specific questions to your client, to your prospect, and making sure that as you ask those questions, you're building in that framework is customized to that person that you're speaking to.
Excellent. Very valuable information there. Definitely. Thank you, Ali. Now, talk to me about some of the misinformation or the myths about sales. What do people think about salespeople?
Well, I think that it depends on who you ask, right? I mean, I think that if you asked some people that, if you ask my dad, I mean, he hates salespeople, right? I mean, my dad still has no idea how I make money. He doesn't understand our business. He just says, no, if someone wants to buy, they want to buy. And if they don't, then the salesperson is just getting, annoying them. So, I think that, I think it was Zig Ziglar who said it best is, salespeople have to be very careful that because they are in a profession where they're trained to persuade, so they have to hold themselves up with the highest amount of integrity, which I 100% agree. But there is some level of, it's an art of persuasion, so that's very important. But ultimately, it depends on the person that you speak to. I mean, one of the things that I'm always hearing from salespeople is, oh, you got to give value, you have to build value, you have to do this, you have to do that, and I get it at a surface level, but at this point, that anecdote has been passed around so much about building value that it really annoys me, because what is value, right? Well, someone might say, well, value is I can give somebody all these statistics about, if I'm selling a sales prospecting tool, I can give them, all these statistics on sales prospecting, and I say, well, good for you. What does that mean to them, right? Do you know that this person's prospecting? Oh no, well, I don't know, but if they were to prospect, they'd want it. Okay, so hang on there. What you find valuable may or may not mean anything to the person who you're speaking to, right? So rather than trying to give value, I really focus on trying to understand the person who I'm speaking to, and everything I do, I frame so that when they ask themselves the question of what's in it for me, they instantly know what's in it for them. And it cannot be, you as salespeople, we delude ourselves to believe that I can give some holier than thou BS, like, hey, I as a salesperson just want to help you. No, your prospect does not believe that. Their inbox is inundated on a daily basis with people that are quote unquote just trying to help them. People don't believe that, address that elephant in the room, and it's there's nothing wrong with you trying to make money, but as soon as you can be very honest and objective with yourself and say that, hey, this is what I want to do, or this is what I'm doing, and this is what's in it for you in through this process, watch how much better your conversations get. As soon as you stop trying to give value and you start looking at it from a perspective of what's in it for this person, why would they take my call, why would they take my meeting, why would they really want to sit down with me and take a demo or a proposal from me.
Right. I think most business owners, when they get a call initially, it is, it's a waste of time.
Absolutely.
You're wasting my time. So if you do get right to the point, at least they know that there is a point to this call, and you can make a decision a lot faster then.
Correct.
So talk to me, Ali, about some of the business that you've done. Give me a case study of a company that you might have worked for. What kind of issues were they having? How were you able to step in and help, and what was their outcome?
So recently I worked with a fairly fast-growing SaaS company, and they were at I believe it was like $5.2 million, and that was their year-over-year ARR, and they were growing very well, but they had a few salespeople that were all kind of doing their own thing. They were still growing, they were doing well, but if they wanted to go from 5 sales reps to 50 sales reps, you got to be able to benchmark some of the activities. So we worked with them. We put the system in place that I was talking about, selling by way of questions. So rather than coming in there and saying, hey, we can do this for you, turning it around and really having a more of a conversation and taking a conversational approach. And we were able to systematize everything, benchmark everything, document it all. And, within 1 year, we got them from 5.2 million ARR to just over 12 million ARR. So we got some fantastic growth. Now, of course, this was a growing company, so they probably would have hit, anywhere between 7 to 8 million anyways without our help. But just the systematization and being able to help them grow in a structured manner from their headcount, from their salespeople, that was really able to fuel their growth, because they didn't have a bunch of mishires. They didn't waste their time trying to train people and not seeing the results. And so they got their new salespeople ramped up and trained and actually producing very, very quickly. And that's what ultimately led to their success. Excellent.
Well, congratulations on that. Now, if somebody is looking to hire a business consultant like yourself, Ali, what should they be looking for? What kind of questions should they be trying to get answered?
I think so. Here's what I always tell everyone is, like I said at the very beginning, I'll work with people on an informal basis. I'll talk to them. We'll try out some different solutions. I'll help them out as much as I can. If someone's not prepared to hop on a call with you and talk to you because they feel that they should be paid for that, and if you're usually trying to get all my help for free, if someone has that attitude, you shouldn't be working with them. And my thought's always been this. All right, so if you're a consultant, you charge on an hourly basis. You're trying to sell me a $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 program or project or whatever it is that you charge, but yet you're afraid to hop on an hour-long call with me. Why? Because you're going to give away all your trade secrets in an hour. All right, man, I'll give you $1,000. Just give me everything. So I'll pay you $1,000 an hour, right? You know what I mean? Like, why are you that afraid to hop on a 1-hour phone call? So I always find that as a huge red flag. And those are the people that have no clue what they're talking about. So if someone tries to say that, oh, my time's very valuable, you have to pay me for it, it's just like, I always find those people are typically the ones that you're going to be most disappointed with, versus the people that are fairly confident in their own abilities. They don't give two shits. They'll hop on a call with you. They know that they're going to be able to work you. They're going to be able to sell you on a much bigger project, and they know they have to put in a little bit of time with you to build that trust and familiarity, because ultimately, my time's not cheap. The projects that I sell are in the 6-figure range, but no one's just going to hand me a 6-figure check for no reason. So I have to work with them. I have to talk to them, and I have to show them that I know what I'm talking about. And yeah, if I got to consult for a few hours for free, then that's just the cost of doing business, because I know that, I look at my reservoir of knowledge as fairly limitless or endless. So I'm not really worried about running out of ideas and concepts and quote unquote value. So if anyone's too afraid to hop on a free phone call with you, that's probably because they know they don't have very much content, and so they want you to pay for it. So that's my thoughts on that.
Good points. And it's a whole lot different selling a $47 product online and selling a 6-figure service. You really need to put extra time in with that client in order to get them to part with that kind of money. So yes, good advice again. Now, Ali, great talking with you today. You've given us a lot of content so far that the listeners will be very happy about. If there's one thing that we haven't really talked about today that you'd like to include, what might that be?
I think that the most important thing that I can always tell everyone is, guys, growing your business is not hard. The success leaves clues. There's plenty of successful people out there that if you study enough of them, you'll see similarities and commonalities. You'll start to see patterns develop. And in the market that we're in today, the economy that we're in today, and the world that we live in today, if you can't get your business, ultimately it depends on what it is that you're selling and how much you're selling it for. But if you can't make a good living running your own company, that's on you. So it's not hard nowadays. If you don't know the answer to something, you don't know how to do something, just Google it. Every single thing is out there for free. You can find it. You just have to Google it. So stop making excuses for yourself. There's so much money out there to be made. Just get off your lazy ass and do it. That would be the most important thing that I can tell people.
All right, great stuff. Great advice, straight to the point, like you said. If people do like what you say here, Ali, and they want to contact you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Best way is just shoot me an email, Ali, A-L-I, @rosegardenconsulting.com. You can also reach out to us on our website is rosegardenconsulting.com. I read every single email that comes through my inbox. I don't respond to every single one of them, but I do read every single email that comes in.
Excellent. Well, Ali Mirza, president of Rose Garden Consulting, thank you very much for being my guest on Expert Profiles Atlanta today.
Thank you.
And to our listening audience, if you like what you hear, hit that like button and share, and we'll see you next time on the show.
Thank you for listening to Expert Profiles Atlanta with Neil Howe. To learn more about the resources in the show or to listen to past episodes, visit expertprofilesatlanta.com.